You're listening to Data Center Therapy. Please take a number, and an engineer will be right with you.
Welcome back, everyone, to yet another episode of Data Center Therapy, a podcast from IVOXY Consulting that talks all things IT with a healthy dose of empathy. I'm your host, Matt Yette, and alongside me, once again, is my co-host, Mr. Matt Cozzolino.
Hello,
Matt,
everyone.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Awesome. I'm really excited to get back to the quote-unquote normal flow of the episode here. I know that typically it's you and I and a guest. We've definitely got the latter today, and I'm excited about it because I should have asked this before, Neil, but we've had you on, right? We've had you on the pod before, but it's been a hot minute, I think. But yeah, everybody out there, Neil Kassal, our very own Neil Kassal, is on the app with us today. Neil, morning.
Thank you. Morning.
But you have been on, right?
Oh, that's right. I talked a little bit about disaster recovery, business continuity.
Ah, right. Yeah. That episode.
I mean, we're riding in the corner. This was episode 72, I think.
Wow.
So I'm getting long in the tooth. The podcast is getting out there.
Yeah.
I can't wait for triple digits. Yeah.
Getting close.
We started our numbering scheme. That's good.
We're talking about working from home today, and it's something pretty much almost everyone out there, certainly everybody listening, is touching on, dealing with, enjoying, sick of at this point now. But there are a lot of challenges, both technical and non, that we all deal with. And myself, I have a little 8-week-old right now, so that has put a little bit of a spicy twist onto the whole work from home concept, even more so. I know you gents have your own challenges. So, Neil, thanks for joining us to talk about this, and really interested to see what your thoughts are on that.
Thanks. Thanks for the welcome. I pretty much have 3 things I'd like to talk about today. One is kind of the layer 8 issues, or physically accommodating work.
Is that the
home.
Frosting? Is that the layer 8?
It could be.
That, by the way,
I usually think of
candles
people
that go on top of the cake. There you go.
You say pickle?
People.
Oh, people.
Yeah. People. Humans.
That's right.
Actually, you're talking about firewall rules. It's the same thing. This is a layer 8 problem. This is something that isn't solved.
But that was layer F.
So yeah, the layer 8, is one of the areas I'd like to talk about. And then optimizing your home networking is the second major thing I think we could talk about for a little bit. And then finally, best practices for your home office. So the same kind of things you might do at work, you definitely want to apply to your home network.
So what did you, let's get into it. What did you decide? How did you solve this whole work from home space? What's your space look like? How do you make it yours?
Sure. Well, I mean, the first thing is making sure you have as much as you can with the space that you have in where you live, is kind of getting rid of distractions and making sure you have a good space to work. So if you're sharing a common space, maybe you have animals or kids or people coming through it, if you can, maybe go to an area that's not going to get that high traffic. You want to move your laptop or your desktop, whatever platform you have, you want to get to a space where you're not going to have those folks strain in.
There you go. Yeah.
And that phone call thing, in terms of, let's say you're sharing your workspace with your wife, who might be working as well, in the same room. For me, I don't know about you, but if I'm on the phone and there's any kind of talking going on near me, I can neither understand what's going on in the background nor what's on the phone call. If I get a phone call in public, I'm running for a quiet space away from everything. It's the weirdest thing, but the distraction itself impacts my hearing, it seems. So I can't imagine being in Cube Land talking about days of yore, right? Or in another room where someone might be on the phone. I don't know. I struggle with that. Does that affect you guys?
It does for me, absolutely. When it's the same level, like if there's just a dull roar, for me, it's a little easier if that kind of a thing. But if we're both sitting here having the same level of conversation, and it's my conversation and then your conversation right next to each other, that's just like, I can't. No, I gotta have a bigger separation than that for me.
It's mental for me too, because I'm not trying to pay attention to anything out there. In fact, when I've been at restaurants, I get made fun of. Like, you hear what those people are talking about? No, I don't.
It's just background noise.
I tune that out completely. And yet, when it's a phone, if my mind wanders and grabs one word that somebody over there says, whoever's saying something on the phone, I heard nothing. Say it again.
Yep.
So, Mr. Neil, did you? It looks like you've got. You're in like a shared space. Do you address that kind of like with it's just the two of you in the house, or is there a bunch of things you have to worry about?
Yeah. So I like working from an area close to my kitchen. I also have a dedicated office with a desktop and a very similar setup, to what I use in the kitchen in terms of microphone and things like that. But for me, this is my casual spot for working. If I really needed to keep the head down, maybe study for an exam, ththings like that, I would go to my dedicated office. So I have I'm blessed, in having that. But I know a lot of folk don't.
Some space in the house, yeah.
You just, so far as you can do in terms of eliminating distractions, if you can get to a corner, a cordoned off room, I think that's the first rule for working from home. And then, something simple like your seating. If you have a good chair, that can make all the difference for, sitting down for 6 to 8 hours a day, talking on Microsoft Teams or Zoom. Yeah. And it doesn't always take money to get the right seating. For instance, I had a chair I was never really comfortable with, gave it to my other half, and she's up in an office upstairs, and that worked out for her. She loves that chair. It didn't take any money. Yeah. So sometimes just trading chairs. Yeah. With folk can
chair trading, not horse trading.
That's right. Yeah. What do you guys have for chairs? I have I got them on sale, so I have one for my wife's desk and mine. They're we went we like Scandinavian, mid-century modern kind of that style anyway, and they so happen. I used to historically walk into furniture stores, and absolutely everything grosses me out. Everything's ugly. Everything. This is the one store that actually, they're not advertising here, but it's called Dania, and they had.
They've got a couple of here. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they had a couple of these chairs on sale. They're normally quite expensive for what I would normally consider reasonable for a chair. And they were like half off, and we bought 2 of them. But they're really contoured. They got a nice flex to go back. They've got that mesh fabric on the back and on the back of the headrest. They got adjustable armrests, a comfortable, seat cushion, and wheels, so I can kind of scoot around. So it's been a fantastic office chair for me.
Some of us with the larger rear section have a hard time with
keep going.
Have a hard time with the chairs. I know what you're talking about. I can kind of see it. It's got the mesh kind of basket between them. Those ridges on the outside kind of cause issues. I was thinking about something like office surplus chairs, right? The actual ones that some office company, some business has gone through and decided, okay, we're going to replace all of our office furniture and go finding one of those. You said mid-century modern, whatever.
Modern,
yeah. I tend towards more like I want something industrial that's going to, like, I'm going to go to Home Depot and get the industrial. I'm a cleaner person that goes and cleans offices. That's what I'm going to get for cleaning stuff. That's what I'm going to get for chairs. That's what I'm going to get for whatever. So I can beat the crap out of it, right?
Yeah.
Very utilitarian guy, that Cozzolino.
That's me.
Well, there's no replacement for just going into, say, a Staples or an Office Depot, plunking yourself down and maybe the crazy good office chair. And if that's more comfortable for you, investing in your own, business/work environment usually pays dividends. Like I said, if you're going to be there for 6 to 8 hours a day.
There's that.
I take the same approach to my toilet shopping. Nothing better.
Are you on the toilet for 6 to 8 hours a day?
I hope not.
I was gonna say I've always heard the idea that you spend good money on the things between you and the ground. So tires, shoes, a bed.
Beds.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, bed, you've got time, right? You add up the time that you're on that thing and quickly can flute away any
third
concern
of your life.
Spending good money. Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So
I'm wearing nothing on my feet right now, by the way, so I don't take it all the way, apparently, Kaz.
You're wearing what?
No shoes, no socks.
No shoes? Oh, I was going to say, I thought you were wearing, like, Crocs or something.
Oh, bite you. I'm going to dig that out in post. That's going out in post. Never. Well, Neil, in the past, we've talked a little bit about wireless in general, I think, when it comes to our home automation technologies and how Z-Wave versus Zigbee versus HomeKit and Bluetooth, things like that.
It's like 7 different fruits right there, but keep going.
And we're seeing also, you've got other users of the Wi-Fi. You've got gamers. You've got 8 Netflix streams going at the same time and this and that. And so we live in also even though it's TCP, a more UDP-ish sensitive world now with Zoom. It's not like I can click on the website and wait an extra second. It doesn't make a difference. You're on calls and you're on with a customer and you don't want to be embarrassed or dropped off. So some sensitive things happening, but also security conscious too. So talk a little bit about, some of the networking pitfalls that we have to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just starting from a very high level, the things you want to optimize for, that you need to take a look at, make sure you're strong in your home setup, are bandwidth. Do you have low latency? And what is your wireless coverage? If you're using wireless client devices, and I am right now, FYI, so I'm not on a hard line.
I was going to ask that. What's your primary connection? Wow. Is it wireless?
It is, and I have line of sight to my access point, and I'll talk a little bit about that, access points versus a router and things. But those are the 3 things you want to shoot for, and the amount of folk you have in your place can impact all of those things. The bandwidth, the latency, and how your wireless coverage is. So, starting at the first or the lowest level, you want to make sure how is the internet getting into your place? Is it cable modem? Is it DSL? Is it fiber? To the curb? Those things typically are faster than they've ever been, right? You can get gigabit fiber at a lot of places now. I'm in Portland, where I was one of the first neighborhoods to get gigabit fiber.
Yeah, Yeti.
Yeah.
I can now get 2 or 5 if I want to.
Whoa.
I wish.
The temptation of do you really need that stupid versus just because I can, it has not won out yet. I'm good at gig.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing.
Neil. Cheers on that.
Yeah, I mean, only a few years ago, right? A few hundred megabits on a cable modem was unbelievable, and now
even these days,
over 150.
Yeah, even these days, you only need 100 meg. Honestly, I mean,
I would agree with you on that, Coz, and it's funny for us to be saying that kind of attitude, but 150, I wouldn't be pinched at this point with that.
No.
Yep.
But you could be, right, Neil? I mean,
that's the thing. If you have a lot of people in your place, depending on what they're doing, you might be able to saturate.
Everyone's got a Netflix stream up. Yeah.
That's right, and so you need to have that under consideration, because now, when your kids, if you have kids and they were younger, maybe they're not streaming Netflix. Maybe later on they have a day off school or whatever. It's the weekend, but you still need to do a little bit of work. It's a consideration. So making sure everything's solid from that first pipe that comes into your house, is where you'd want to start. So what I've seen, this was interesting. Renting out a place in Phoenix, my old house. The renters had bought a DOCSIS 2.0 cable modem. And when I left
the rental agreement, don't you dare rent a DOCSIS 2.0.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't you dare.
They had an old cable modem, and when I left, I had a DOCSIS 3.0 cable modem. And so right there, knowing that you could instantly up your speed with a more modern piece of hardware, that attaches to that cable, line into the house. You want to make sure you're using the best modems or, kind of attachment gear for your uplinks to the internet. And then furthermore, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I'd tail onto that a little bit, specifically for cable. It takes a little bit of paying attention to, but the less branches you have off of that feed into the house, the better, right?
So I mean your cable plant.
The cable plant itself, right. So when I moved in here, there was a TV in every room, and they had coax, and they had cable, and they had, we watch NFL all the time, so everyone's got a TV and a subscription, or however they do it. So I unplugged all of those and ran a dedicated line from where it comes in to the modem, so there's much less stuff going on there.
Yeah, your cable modem might be hung off the end of an 8-leg octopus split 17 times, and why is my packet so big? No, Comcast says, no, it signal to your house is great. Well, in bed it is. By the time I get to the other side of the house, it's dead.
Yep.
Yeah, Kaz is crying in Comcast, Neil. We're sitting over here over that gorgeous glass.
That's right, fiber. No, that's a great
Make it
point.
happen.
That's a great point, Cozzolino. Yeah, how you physically handle that layer 1 on the cable inbound feed is totally important.
Mm-hmm.
And moving beyond that to your router, if you have an old router that you've used with different modems and things like that, because the speeds of internet connectivity have gotten better. If you have a really old router, its CPU may not be able to handle lots of streams, ports open and whatnot when you make connections to the internet. So make sure your router is up to date, recent.
I mean, I should swap out my Linksys 54G for something a little better.
What a workhorse!
I know, right?
Oldie but goodie.
Back when they first started custom router firmware. I think that was the one.
Tomato and DD. So that
DWRT.
DDWRT. It used to be way better. They nerfed future versions because they were so beefy. They had longevity to them and this and that, and then they purposely on future versions cut back on the CPU and the memory. They actually slowed it down from the earlier ones. But that's a point that, Neil, you were kind of pushing me towards as well, that yes, you mentioned a cable modem. I think most people don't BYO, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or at least maybe they do nowadays, but back, the all-in-one device might be the worst part. Is it the simplest and quickest to get you from off to on that day? Yup, sure. But that built-in cable modem / router / Wi-Fi access point sitting over there in that corner where the cable does come into the wall
behind
close to the source, like you said, Kaz.
Mm-hmm.
Man, if you can somehow make it to your router doesn't need to be centralized. That can sit over there with it, but have dedicated hardware, and it doesn't need to be crazy expensive. But if you can have a dedicated router and then hang a dedicated wireless access point off of that, your entire experience is going to be way better.
Yep,
that's been my experience.
Couldn't agree
Very
more.
cool for the job.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
everything gets its own piece. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have the good fortune of a few of my rooms had Cat 5e run, and so they terminate
That's nice.
they terminate into a hot water heater closet, and I made it such that there's hard lines for other rooms, but where I tend to work out of the, like I said, my common area, I didn't want to have a wire coming from my laptop to the wall. And so I have an AP, as you just mentioned, Yeti, that then does, kind of hard line in to my router. And so that's, getting into the more advanced things. Okay, you've upgraded your layer 1 stuff, your cable modem or however the internet gets in your place, and then you've upgraded your router. Then you can talk about, hey, do you need separate access points for really strong wireless in certain rooms if you have a larger house, or
do you wire all those access points in, or do you let them be a mesh? Do you?
Well,
and if they are wired, and then make sure their channels don't overlap if possible.
Does it automatically manage that for you, right? Yeah.
One weird thing too is depending on how close you live physically to your neighbors, if you're in a condo, an apartment, or your homes are narrow between, you don't have too much of a gap between, run a tool that'll put your wireless access radio into a promiscuous mode and look at the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And try to put a channel on your wireless access point that is both free and as narrow as possible, really. I know everyone loves to see those big number speed tests, and they want those 80 megahertz wide channels. All it does, you have to be right next to the radio. The air needs to be pristine, and then what are you doing? You shouldn't expect to. It's certainly not going to make a difference for streaming. And all it could possibly, in my opinion, do more likely is to collide with another SSID bleeding into that access point. Now you cut everybody's airtime performance in half at best, or worse, further on. It's just narrow, clean channels. You're going to have stable, solid Wi-Fi also.
You need just enough power to get from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then,
I'm lucky where I'm at, yeah. I don't have a lot of bad actors when it comes to that. I'd be over on the door knocking, hey, what about your Wi-Fi channel bed? They go, what the hell are you talking about, Matt? Go home.
Get out of here.
I thought you wanted some sugar. Get out of my face.
Yeah, I haven't gone that far. There are lots of SSIDs where I live, and the homes are very close to each other. But no, I've never directly addressed layer 8 neighbors, so to speak.
It was election season. I see all these election signs. I've got, Short, narrow your channels, idiots.
Clean up your wireless. Yeah.
Yep.
Stop blasting me. Yeah.
Now, one way you can get.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I got nothing. Go, Neil.
Yeah, right. So one way you can kind of take things to the ultimate, in terms of doing quality of service without explicitly saying, "Hey, limit my Netflix streams," or block this access or whatever during the daytime hours.
Prioritize my laptop. Screw everyone else.
Right. And a lot of the routers will have those controls. Even some of those routers from the cable companies and things like that will have kind of parent control features and things like that. You can get kind of a poor man's QoS if you hardline in those clients that they're going to be used for business. I actually have a dedicated port on my router for my other half's business machine, and she has her own VLAN. She has her own firewall rules. In my router, I do run OpenWRT, which is software that replaces the stock firmware on my router. And that's one way you can get kind of a good solid connection, especially for those machines that are hardwired, is to make a separate VLAN to make your own rules, and then to directly hook it into the router so that power goes out, that router's on a UPS, that machine is which is a laptop, is going to be able to stay on the internet and keep doing business.
I want to know what Neil said. He's running OpenWRT. Maybe that's a security issue, but I'm all right with that. Kaz, are you willing to share what firewall you're running at home?
Sure. I found a Fortinet that I actually decided to run at home.
And I realize I said firewall doesn't necessarily mean your edge device. Typically, your firewall, your router, it also can be your firewall, and a lot of times it is. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right. You got the FortiGate at home, right? I've got. Did I talk about it already?
You got the Ubiquity, whatever, right?
No, I did. I had the USG, which is for a gig router / firewall, cheap. It in a bubble. I really liked it. Ubiquity itself, we've talked about it a little bit, just support and their product direction. They keep coming up with this weird niche stuff. And hey, they haven't had a proper replacement for that USG. I tried to do that USG Pro or UDM Pro, the Dream machine. It was a nightmare machine, and that went back in the box. I bought that. I can't remember the company. It's out of like Netherlands, but they sell custom hardware for OPNsense, which is an open source fork of pfSense. So pfSense probably has more people nodding than I think they call it OpenSense without the E. But I run that on a purpose-built box. It's basically a heatsink, the entire box. Not that the thing gets super hot, but it's got 2 SFP plus ports. It will, this particular board will packet switch route up to like 14 gigabit. Like it can actually drive those ports. Given that Ziply just came out with multi-gig 2 and 5, they're handing that off over. Again, I'm not taking advantage of it, but they're handing that off over
10 gig.
RJ45. Is it? Okay. 10 GB base T. So they're using that. What I would do is just get one of the many cheap compatible modules to step down from.
FS is amazing for optics, honestly. FS.com. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Like
okay.
10 gig optics for $100.
I know, right.
$1,000.
Right.
Yeah.
So this would just be like a GLCT type thing, to turn into a standard RJ45 port. When I'm ready, it'll be cool because I pay $80 a month for a gig now. The 2 gig is $120. That's a little worm out in front of me. Like, you can get this. The 5 gig is $300. At that point, listen, I don't want to quadruple my spend for really truly no gain. I mean, but overall that box is great, and the OPNsense, it's definitely from scratch. Nothing works. Like, you have to set everything up. You have to build out your static routes. You have to build out your VLANs, all that kind of stuff. Firewall rules, yes, because by default nothing gets passed, which is a proper firewall. But it's got like a plug-in ecosystem where I've got WireGuard running right on it. So my tunnel, the site-to-site tunnel, terminates right on that box. I don't have to hang a VM off and do some crazy back and forth, through the gateway. And I'm running right now Sensei. I'm only detecting, but it's an IDS IPS package, and there's a commercial version, but I've obviously got the free one, and it's detecting that was the first time I've seen that domain on my network. That's new, which is something you wouldn't think about, but maybe you have a pattern, right? And if you're going on a site you haven't been to, maybe that's something worth calling out, and then you can actually act on that too, all while not overrunning this neat little firewall box. I love the thing.
Yeah,
but
that sounds really cool.
I spent more than both. I don't know if I spent more than you did, Kaz, but it was like $1,500.
I bought like 6 of them, so.
Yeah, but one of them was $1,500 for a home firewall / router.
That's a bit, yeah.
I work in the business, clearly, right?
Right, exactly.
That's what yeah.
And I think, Neil, you were talking about different VLANs. Do you run all of those on, like, off of the firewall itself, off of that router itself?
That's right. So the router effectively acts as the gateway for, a lot of that traffic, where I have like a little lab network, and I have a front access
truly your
point.
Core.
Yeah, exactly. Core, yeah. The router is the core, and obviously, if I ever get fancy like you guys, I could get switching and distribute that stuff, but it all kind of centralizes through there. So it doesn't take
the tough part. Switching is just continuing that out and just branching out, but you've already got that core setup going.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely, and that's well, the point of that is to make as few connections into that as possible. So distribute it where I can, but for those folk in your household, that need that hard line for a good solid connection, there's nothing beating plugging straight into your router and going from there, especially if the power goes out, right?
So you mentioned taking our enterprise best practices, and even if we don't have to spend $50,000, $100,000 on a product or whatever, that doesn't mean the concepts don't matter.
Right.
Backup.
Yep.
And, oh man, me myself, I've had, within the last 5 years, I'm embarrassed to say, I'll never let that happen again moments when it comes to losing data. But it feels like you almost always most people have to feel that pain before they actually, okay, I'll back up now. Well, how does that get you back your data from before? It doesn't. How do you back up at home?
Sure. So I have a centralized server that does a whole bunch of different functions, and I run Debian. So that's a little bit more of an advanced setup. Most folk are not going to have the family acceptance factor, to run a server in a particular room or something like that. So
what, honey? Just log in as root. Yeah,
that's right.
Sudo my sandwich.
Yeah, sudo make me a sandwich. Oh boy.
Well, you can't say that.
No, you can't. It's a classic joke for the folk that XKCD.
Thank you, Neil. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, Time Machine and Windows file backups onto a server are really, great practices. If you don't have a server, at least hook up a little USB drive to your client devices. Do a local backup, but treat your work machine, treat the home machines that you might use periodically for work, like the contents of them matter, and that reloading them is not going to be a fun operation. Just make sure you have backups. Period.
Can I pick on Windows for a little bit?
Please.
And listen, macOS has been, in my opinion, frustratingly decreasing in actual functionality and stability and blah blah, and the iOSification of my desktop. All of this, I've got gripes. Man, but the Apple, I don't even know if Apple even ever said it just works. I know they get made fun of when things don't just work by someone saying it just works, and I don't know where that came from. But if one thing does just work, it's Time Machine. Now, there are sometimes you get like, I need to do a new full backup, something like this, but ultimately you take your aforementioned USB drive, you plug it into your system, and it's stupid. Do you want to use this for backup? Yup, yes, done. Done. It protects your entire system, and you don't even know what's going on. And it does it on an hourly basis, and you can walk back, which is that magic effect to go back in time to yesterday. What's this folder look like 3 days ago? You can do that. You can buy your new laptop and say, you know what? I want the same experience. And it is the same laptop.
I will say that's the coolest thing about the Mac. Is like, let me just back my system up and then restore it. And now my whole system's back. That's actually
It might take a long time
cool.
over the network, but yeah, I mean, that is awesome, and it's a no-brainer, and I lost a lot of footage from my Iceland trip with my wife in 2017 because it wasn't being backed up. Well, here's the weird thing. I had like hundreds of gigabytes of content, right? Like drone footage, this and that. So in that, in the transition, I'm working on it. It's a temporary folder. I'm in Final Cut Pro. I don't want to protect this stuff that's kind of changing. So I'm just going to put it over there, and then I'll move it to my permanent place. It does get backed up in the hard drive. I even send, I'm willing to spend $1,500 to get this up. I'm going to send the hard drive out. No big deal. Nope, we can't fix it. Oh, I still have the hard drive in the drawer just in case, and it's like in memoriam kind of thing. But always back up.
Absolutely.
Always.
Do you then subscribe to the 3-2-1? So do you have, you're backed up to a system, and then that's copied to another spot, that's copied off site, that's
the two different types of media thing. I would say I don't know if I agree with that so much anymore, or I think people take that literally, and maybe they mean it that way, but I don't care if it's on a hard drive set over here and a hard drive set over here. In my opinion, that's too. I think they mean tape and hard drive or CD, and I don't think that matters.
I'd say that's getting the right way, right? If I've got a storage over here and a storage over there, I think specifically
two different sets of media that don't depend on each other.
I'm not taking a snapshot on the same array. That's not a different set of media, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know about three copies is your one is your production copy, right? Yeah. So I mean, I think even without that as a goal, you can achieve that if you're doing it properly. Because yes, I back it up and then I archive out to an Azure Blob bucket. So there's 3-2-1 satisfied right there.
If it's important to you, like it's family photos or something like that, you want 2 copies on-prem. You might want it on your central file server, NAS if you have one, and then on a backup device, and then put it up in the cloud. Put it up in Google Photos or Amazon Photos or whatever, as you mentioned in Azure Blob Yeti, because if something bad happened to your house, and God forbid, right? But if something did, you have that copy. You're not going to lose everything. So there you go. That's best practice for business can be best practice for home. And then also don't forget about your home router, and access point configs too, because maybe you muck around, maybe you have pfSense or OpenWRT, or you just made some changes. And if your router has an option to save out a tarball or a zip file, go grab that right now and put it somewhere safe. Copy it somewhere, put it on a USB stick, because you never know when a power outage or something can happen, and then gosh, it's not working. What do I now have to look through every setting, or you could just restore
changed?
It. Yeah,
someone forgot to do it right. Yeah.
Yep.
I actually just maybe 6 months ago got all of the network gear set up to nightly on a schedule run a TFTP out to a storage spot. So I'm getting the constant backups, and they're rotating, and they're writing that out.
Yeah, that's what you want to do. If you're ready if you've evolved your home network maintenance to that spot, we got some more tips for you. But also a best practice, in a business is not doing changes without letting folk know. And to that matter, don't muck around with your router or access points during the day. If you have other folk in your house who are using it for school or for work.
I'm on a Zoom call. Now is not the time to start messing with wireless settings.
Or your wife is your change control board member. Can I do this? No. Okay. We'll do it next week. We'll push it.
Yep. Absolutely. So no changes without either doing it on the off hours or letting folk know. And then when you have segmented networks. So if you're doing VLANs, if you're doing kind of more advanced security stuff, there are ways you can still make your home life kind of fun and integrate things, i.e. AirPlay, right? If you want to cast a YouTube over to the TV.
MDNS.
That's right. MDNS, Avahi, all that fun stuff. And it's a lot of work. You have to do.
It's the worst.
It's
stuff on your firewall.
Because it is the best. How about that? It's the worst because it's the best. Because everything.
Not.
First of all, let me explain. If you have if you're a typical home user, you're not in IT, you have a single VLAN, things pretty much just work because you're not worried about anything that's broadcast should be picked up by everything else on that network. Fine, done. When you talk about multiple VLANs, then you're right. You have to reflect that data to the other network, and there needs to be somebody who stands on both sides of the line and said, hey, I heard you on this side, I'm going to shout it on this side, more or less. That all sounds wonderful. But in the fight for simplicity, a lot of different companies want to be that guy who's yelling on both sides of the fence. I'll take care of it. But then you got this other thing plugged in on the network that's maybe trying to take care of it. or everybody's a coordinator. And the problem is they all start advertising different aged data that might no longer be relevant, or it's not relevant. It's not yet cached by everything that I might be listening to. I'd go out there and ask, and 3 different people come back at me with 3 different answers of what that automatic entry is. In trying to be super simple and easy and magic, 3 wizards telling me different wands at me. I don't want to be hit by any of the spells. Kaz, have you seen that?
Yes, I ended up trying to do it on trying to set up MDNS and MDNS reflector on my layer 3 switch. And I got it running, and it just
good place for it.
Chews through the CPU, which is surprising.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing if you need to dive deep, the magic fades away, and it becomes this really brittle thing that you don't have much control over. Just let it do its thing. Go on, look for the IVOXY daemon config, the man pages. Go search for those. Tell me how in depth you find them. There's nothing out there.
To configure the setting.
Right. It's a binary that just does something. And there's all these options and no explanation of what any of them, most of them do. And so I dove in and I had a notepad up where I'm like, okay, this thing is running IVOXY. All these things are running IVOXY. And that in itself is okay, because that's basically, in most cases, just a listening client, right, Matt? They're listening.
That's my understanding. Is that's one of the ways to plug it in and make your thing smart about it. Is you can use that binary to install it, and now I know MDNS, and I talk about all of that, right?
But does it necessarily advertise itself at that point too?
That's the piece that I haven't found. Is the
right.
How do you set that up as a relay server to now I want you to configure, listen on this, listen on that.
There is a repeater. There is a repeater and a reflector, which is confusing in itself also, because aren't those the same thing? Well, no, not really. Is it working for you right now, Kaz?
Yes.
Don't touch it.
Right. The one thing that's not working is my Roku remote won't pick up the TV, but I can Chromecast, I can AirPlay, I can connect to my Sonos, which is the big one.
It's probably because you VLAN'd out. You created a separate VLAN just for that Roku remote because you're you.
No. It's the app on my phone is actually the one that doesn't connect. So.
You know what's annoying for me? My Unify Protect security camera system, which is my own that's on that Raspberry Pi ARM64 version that they don't want you to run it on. They want you to buy their hardware. And I said, no, I won't buy your hardware. I'll run it on my own stuff. It runs on, my phone runs on a client Wi-Fi network, VLAN. And the controller runs on my LAN services network. The app is still stupid enough to think that it's a remote connection because it's not in the same, because it'll only blast out on the same VLAN for where's my controller? Oh, I'm not here. Let me go out to the internet, to the gateway in the cloud, and come back. So everything's a remote connection. So I open it up, and it takes just that much longer to bring up the cameras when I just want to pop them up. So people have been screaming about it for months. I'm sure eventually they'll put it in and whatever, but to self-host.
Right.
Speaking of which, I'm going to go there. Log4j, guys. This is one topical thing we had not talked about yet on the pod. I put a couple of little videos up on IVOXY.com on our blog site or our fledgling YouTube channel right now that we will be building out. So I don't want to push too much traffic there, but on IVOXY.com/blog, I think are a couple of posts about Log4j. First talking about it, and if you're listening to this, chances are you're aware of what's been going on, but I believe we're up to version 2.17. That's the truly patched version. I think once you got to 2.15, I think I think it was your attack likelihood was lessened in terms of your security, but you could still get a DOS. I think you could still DOS a service was really what the latest patches have been about, more than actual exploitation for compromising it. But I have Unify controller and the Unify Protect and an old install of Unify Video. Protect is not vulnerable. Just the Unify controller and the old video. They run Java heaps, and sure enough, they were running 2.11, so I was able to replace those jar files, and that was the fix without having to upgrade the whole package. I just dropped. Thankfully, apparently that library hasn't otherwise changed between those versions, because you'd think the application would be like, wait a minute, what the heck? But have you guys had to mitigate anything or talk to any of your customers who are running into it?
It comes up for me all the time when I'm talking to customers. But thankfully, I haven't had anything written that's been using it to actually run day to day. vCenter being the exception, but
But again, that's a sideways attack anyway, because your vCenter is not exposed to the internet.
Better not be.
Right. But I am just starting to roll up I'm trying to do a proper log consolidation. We'll call it a seam, maybe, right? I want to roll my own at home, and I'm deciding. And here's the thing with that Log4j, that setup amplifies this Log4j vulnerability. Because let's say the front end, something talking to the internet or exposed, has Log4j, and it's not vulnerable. But then it sends its log to a server that is. Well, now it's even deeper into your network on another level, or like a DMZ server that hands off a log to a centralized LAN server. That's the scary part.
Now we should do some micro segmentation to make that secure.
You'd still have to do introspection, though.
Well, right.
Oh, wait, no, you wouldn't, because then if it wants to reach out to a server,
it can't. You aren't allowed to SSH. You're a log system. You aren't allowed to SSH to anyone.
But the vulnerability would still be attacked at that point. You'd still be susceptible to that. I run that Ants Marching site, and I spat out my Apache logs, and there they were, JNDI, I'm looking for strings. So I fired up fail to ban. Now, I've got no Java on the site, so it's not vulnerable. But still, if you're trying, you're a bad actor. I don't want to see your IP ever again. So fail to ban has been swinging that hammer automatically for a while now. I love it. I put up a video a couple of days ago on leveraging Rubrik. So if you're listening, you may be a Rubrik customer. If you're not, talk to us about it, because it's really powerful to be able to say, okay, my entire environment's backed up by Rubrik, or my backup platform. It should be. How do I search my entire environment if I have these Log4j potentially vulnerable files? Search for API call. You do a global search against Rubrik's metadata index, and boom. Now it runs for a long time. I will say,
like
that
hours
metadata.
Long?
Yeah, it might be, depending on the size. Yep. But it's a one-stop shop, and then you just go get your coffee, go about your day, leave that terminal window open, and it returns a table of any VMs, objects, whatever files that might contain that file, anything that has that file. Secondarily, Arctic Wolf, another good partner of ours, they are able to search within the files themselves to find out if the vulnerable bits are in because Log4j, one of the mitigation techniques is actually ripping that class, that vulnerable class, right out of the core file. So now it just doesn't exist. It can't be mitigated, or it can't be attacked. Arctic Wolf can actually search within the files themselves and detect it across your entire environment. So super powerful stuff.
A network scanning tool as well.
I just downloaded
for that, don't they? Yeah.
It's up on GitHub, and I ran it on my single home file server, and it did confirm that there's no vulnerable Log4j component. But how cool is that?
Not that you know of, Neil.
That's what I was looking for.
Not that you know of, Neil. You're not vulnerable.
Right. Thanks.
Yeah, but that's an Arctic Wolf one?
Arctic Wolf,
Neil?
yeah.
Cool.
Right up on GitHub.
Very cool. Yeah, well, if you've got questions about that, reach out to us, because we're fielding an awful lot of, questions and conversations about the topic. We're doling out advice and helping people leverage the tools that they may already have to get their arms best around it, and in worst case scenario, helping mitigate, or having conversations of how can I stay ahead of something like this if should it happen again with a different software package, because it's incredibly impressive and terrifying, the attack vectors. I mean, there was the Google Project Code. Was it Project Code? What's their Black Hat investigative unit there? The Project Zero, I think. Okay. Project Zero. And it's about 0 days, and there were a lot of smart people, and they deep dove. I'm still waiting for the second part of the blog post. They went deep on how the iOS
is that there was an iOS Apple thing at the same time? Was that the same logging system, or was that a different?
Not the same logging system. This thing was a zero-click, zero interaction, zero visibility, complete compromise of an iPhone.
Good
via iMessages.
And it was used against like Saudi Arabian journalists and all of this. And they dove deep, and it talked about, I'm not kidding you, they basically found a vulnerability in the way old school image compression that fax machines and copiers used to use.
Yeah.
So basically it was the early forms of like image compression and black and white and this and that, and you could form an overflow. So what they did, though, leveraging this exploit, is they found it, because basically the iPhone, if you sent a GIF, it would hand it off to this process outside of that sandbox. And this library is older than dirt, so it's like, it's solid, stable. It's been around for 40 years. And then it would do its thing because it wants to be able to handle any image format. And so this really obscure type of thing. And so, but they could handle it. And what would happen was they overflowed this vulnerable process. And at that point, they then were able to build a virtualized environment completely. They were able to basically reconstitute an operating environment that was hidden from everything else, that was unencumbered by any kind of sandbox. They call it Blastdoor. And Apple's now fixed at least that patch. They've encompassed all that within Blastdoor because iMessage, adding all those stupid-ass plugins, has basically blown holes into its security. Wow. So now they've encased it in this Chernobyl-like obelisk, right? And they hopefully nothing's leaking anymore. But it's like, that's terrifying. And basically, Google's Project Zero said, this is basically the most sophisticated hack we've ever seen in our lives. It's unbelievable in how it was even achieved. And yet, you could send somebody this malicious packet and you would never know. You nothing to click on. No message doesn't even show up. All silent. And it builds an entire virtualized infrastructure on your phone for them to operate out of. Wow. Terrifying.
Yeah.
And if you know if it's on iOS, you know what Android got the same. They do. They just haven't run down the detailed analysis on it. But super impressive and terrifying all at once. So yeah, we're in interesting times with security. Is no longer like a you're going to be hacked. Ooh, we're just trying to scare you into business. It's not that anymore. No, I don't have to apologize for talking about security. I promise you, I'm not trying to scare you. Like that doesn't even have to be said anymore. It's
this is real. We have to actually look at this and pay attention to it.
My gosh. Yeah. Well, Neil, we could really go on all day, couldn't we?
We could.
Pretty good episode. I'd like to see you even got your haircut for the episode. Too bad we won't be showing that. But is there anything else you wanted to add you're up to, Neil, before we wrap?
No. I hope everyone out there stays secure and warm and healthy through the season here.
Yeah. Well, Kaz, it's good to be back on with you two on the regular.
It's been a minute.
You guys held it down while I was out with the paternity leave, so thank you very much. And I came back, and it was me and Alec doing the Nick Shaline interview, which was fantastic. If you have not heard last episode, with the first former and only so far chief software officer for the Air Force and the Space Force. Freaking cool is that, man? Yeah. So he had a lot to say about security and DevSecOps and things like that. So check that last episode out if you haven't yet. And outside of that, everybody have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Yeah, we hope everyone has a great holiday season. And from IVOXY to your family, definitely. And if you've got any questions, well wishes, critical comments, send them to Neil. But all the good stuff, send to podcast@ivoxy.com. Thanks again for listening to Data Center Therapy. Y'all have a great one.